The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched beyond what most species could see. Ambassador Zyx Theta floated in her crystalline form, watching the emergency session unfold. For 3 cycles, the Council had monitored the new species from the third planet of Sol System. Humans, they called themselves. Small, fragile creatures with soft skin and no natural weapons. The humans have rejected our protection offer again, announced High Counselor Vrex, his tentacles writhing with frustration. The Thraxian leader's voice echoed through the chamber, reaching representatives from over 400 civilized worlds. They claim they can defend themselves against the Korvax swarm. Laughter rippled through the assembly. The Korvax were the terror of the galaxy, a hive mind of billions that consumed entire star systems. Even a mighty Draconid empire had lost 12 worlds to them. Perhaps we should demonstrate the reality of war to these naive creatures, suggested Ambassador Kellner of the Sigma Collective. His mechanical voice carried no emotion, but everyone understood the implications. A small Korvax scout fleet near their outer colonies. Let them experience true fear, then they will accept our protection protocols. Zyx Theta observed the human representative, Ambassador Sarah Chun, standing alone at her designated platform. The woman showed no fear, despite being surrounded by beings that could crush her with a thought. How strange these humans were. The Council recognizes the human representative, Vrex announced with barely concealed disdain. Sarah Chun stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. Distinguished members of the Council, Earth appreciates your concern. However, we must respectfully decline your protection. We are capable of defending ourselves. More laughter. The Altarian delegate's bioluminescent skin flashed in amusement. You have one planet. No shield technology. Your fastest ships barely achieve light speed. Your weapons are projectile-based. How can you possibly stand against the Korvax? We have our ways, Chun replied simply. High Counselor Vrex's patience ended. So be it. The Council votes to allow a demonstration. 1 Korvax scout fleet will be directed toward human space. When you beg for our help, the protection tax will be double the standard rate. The vote was unanimous, except for 1 abstention. Zyx Theta found herself curious about these humans who showed no fear. 3 weeks later, long-range sensors detected the Korvax scout fleet approaching the human colony of New Texas, a frontier world with only 2 million colonists. The Council gathered to watch what they assumed would be a quick surrender. Korvax fleet entering human sensor range, reported the tactical officer. 18 bio ships, standard scout configuration. The humans they're not evacuating. On the main screen, the colony showed no signs of panic. Instead, construction crews were building something in the open plains outside the main city. What are they doing? Vrex demanded. Unknown. High Counselor. They appear to be marking landing zones. The Korvax fleet descended toward the planet, their bioships pulsing with anticipation of fresh genetic material to absorb. The Council members leaned forward, expecting to see the humans finally understand their mistake. Then, something unexpected happened. Energy spiked from the planet's surface, the tactical officer announced, confusion in his voice. Multiple contacts launching from underground silos. On the screen, hundreds of missiles streaked upward from hidden positions. But these weren't aimed at the Korvax ships. They're targeting empty space, someone muttered. They missed completely. But Sarah Chun smiled. The missiles detonated in a precise pattern around the Korvax fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the bioships began to shudder and writhe. Impossible, breathed the Altarian delegate. Those are nuclear weapons. They're using atomic fire. The electromagnetic pulses from the nuclear detonations disrupted the bioneural connections between the Korvax ships. But that was just the beginning. As the fleet struggled to reform, shapes appeared on the horizon. Angular, armored vehicles moving with surprising speed across the terrain. Ground forces? Vrex was incredulous. They're sending ground forces against a space-capable enemy? The lead vehicle bore markings that Chun had once explained meant United States Marine Corps. What happened next would change the Council's understanding of humans forever. The Marines didn't wait for the Korvax to land properly. As the disoriented bio ships descended, seeking to discharge their warrior drones. The humans struck. Missiles, railguns, and weapons the Council couldn't identify tore into the organic hulls. But it was when the bioships finally released their drones that the real shock came. The Korvax drones were perfect killing machines, six-legged monstrosities with razor claws and acid blood, operating with hive mind efficiency. They had overwhelmed the defenses of 100 worlds. The Marines met them with controlled violence that defied belief. Where other species had relied on energy shields and automated defenses, the humans used tactics that seemed primitive yet proved devastatingly effective. They channeled the drones into kill zones, where interlocking fields of fire turned the charging masses into organic debris. When the drones adapted and tried to flank, they found more Marines waiting, dug into positions that had been prepared weeks in advance. How did they know where to position their forces? The Sigma Collective ambassador asked. Sarah Chun finally spoke. We've been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We know how to read terrain. But the true revelation came when one group of drones broke through the human lines and charged toward a squad of Marines. The Council expected to see the humans retreat or die. Instead, they witnessed something that would become legend throughout the galaxy. The Marines fixed bayonets. They're attaching blades to their projectile weapons. The tactical officer reported, disbelief evident. They're preparing for close combat. What followed was 30 seconds of violence, so precise, so practiced, that even the warrior species in the council chamber fell silent. The humans didn't just fight, they fought with a coordination and ferocity that the hive mind Korvax couldn't match. Each Marine covered another, movements flowing together like a deadly dance they had performed 1,000 times before. When the last drone fell, its acidic blood sizzling on Marine combat armor, a cheer went up from the human positions. But they didn't celebrate long. Already, they were repositioning, preparing for the next wave. Korvax fleet attempting retreat, the tactical officer announced. But the humans weren't finished. From orbit, a ship appeared, not large by galactic standards, but something about its design made its crystalline form resonate with unease. The USS Normandy, according to its transponder. Single human vessel engaging, someone reported. There, by the void, were those weapons. The Normandy unleashed hell. Kinetic weapons, accelerated to fractional light speed, punched through bioship armor like paper. Nuclear-tipped missiles followed, their detonations precisely calculated to maximize damage to organic tissue. In 12 minutes, half the Korvax scout fleet was debris. The remaining bioships tried to jump to hyperspace, but the humans had one more surprise. Specialized missiles detonated in a pattern that destabilized the hyperspace window. The Korvax were trapped. Broadcast from the human vessel, the communications officer announced. On the screen, a human male appeared. His uniform bore the insignia of a colonel in something called the United States Space Force. But it was his eyes that caught attention, cold, professional, holding the promise of violence barely contained. Korvax fleet, this is Colonel Marcus Hayes. You have two options. Surrender unconditionally, or we will destroy you. You have 30 seconds to comply. The Council watched in stunned silence as the Korvax, the terror of the galaxy, the unstoppable swarm, broadcast their surrender. High Counselor Vrex turned to Sarah Chun, his tentacles now showing signs of nervous tremor. How is this possible? You're a young species. You've barely left your planet. The Korvax have conquered civilizations millions of years old. Chen's expression remained diplomatic, but there was steel in her voice. With respect, High Counselor, you made a fundamental error. You assumed we fear war. The truth is quite different. She paused, looking around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces, now regarding humanity with new eyes. We don't fear war. We fear what we become when we wage it. That's why we prefer peace. But when forced to fight, she gestured to the screen showing Marines securing Korvax prisoners. We've had 10,000 years to perfect the art of organized violence. Your Korvax conquered civilizations that had evolved beyond war. They've never faced a species that treats warfare as both science and art. But your technology, someone protested. It's primitive compared to ours. Is it? Chen asked. Your shields couldn't stop our kinetic weapons. Your sensors couldn't detect our hidden silos. Your psychology couldn't predict our tactics. You've spent so long relying on advanced technology that you've forgotten the fundamentals of warfare. We haven't. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Then ZYX Theta spoke, her crystalline form chiming with each word. The Marines on the surface, they seemed to enjoy the combat. Chen nodded slowly. That's what truly frightens us about ourselves. Give a human a weapon, a cause, and an enemy, and they'll find ways to win that you can't imagine. We learned long ago to chain that beast with laws and ethics. But when those chains are broken, on the screen, Marines were already helping wounded Korvax drones, providing medical aid with the same efficiency they had shown in killing moments before. The contrast was jarring. The Council will need to reconsider humanity's status, Vrex announced, his voice subdued. Perhaps a seat on the Security Committee would be appropriate. We would be honored, Chen replied. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, Oh, and High Counselor, that wasn't our military. That was just one Marine battalion and a single patrol ship that happened to be in the area. The silence that followed was deafening. Your actual military forces? Someone finally asked. Currently conducting training exercises near Jupiter, Chun said pleasantly. We thought it best not to escalate the situation unnecessarily. As the council session ended and representatives filed out, many casting nervous glances at the human ambassador, ZYX Theta approached Chun. You let us direct the Korvax toward your colony. The crystalline being observed. You knew this would happen. Chen's diplomatic smile never wavered. The galaxy needed to understand something about humanity. We've spent centuries to try to leave our violent past behind. But if forced to choose between extinction and unleashing what we really are, she shrugged. Well, now everyone knows the answer. And what do you really? ZYX Theta asked. Chen was quiet for a moment, watching the screen where Marines shared rations with Korvax prisoners. We're a species that turned warfare into such an art form that we terrify ourselves. That's why we reach for peace so desperately. Not because we fear war, but because we know exactly how good we are at it. As ZYX Theta departed, she found herself grateful that humanity seemed to prefer diplomacy. The galaxy had survived the Korvax by accepting their domination or hiding behind shields. But humans? Humans had looked at the perfect killing machines and asked, how do we kill them better? And they have found an answer. The news of humanity's victory over the Korvax scout fleet spread through the galaxy like wildfire through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, species that had cowered before the swarms might suddenly looked at the stars with different eyes. But nowhere was the impact greater than in the Korvax collective itself. Deep in the biomechanical heart of the Korvax prime hive, the overmind pulsed with confused signals. For the first time in its million-year existence, it had encountered something that defied its understanding. The humans hadn't just defeated its scouts. They had done so with primitive weapons and tactics that should have been obsolete. The Overmind's vast consciousness reached out to its tactical subminds, demanding answers. How had projectile weapons penetrated bioarmor that could withstand plasma beams? Why had the hive mind coordination failed against individual warriors operating independently? The questions multiplied faster than solutions appeared. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions had become daily occurrences. Ambassador Sarah Chun found herself the center of attention she neither wanted nor enjoyed. Every species suddenly wanted to know more about these Marines and their fighting methods. Ambassador Chun, the Draconid representative, growled, his scaled form towering over her. My people have fought the Korvax for 3 centuries. We've lost entire fleets. Yet your single battalion defeated them in hours. We demand to know your secrets. Chen remained calm, though she noticed her security detail. 2 Marines in dress blues had subtly shifted position. There are no secrets, Ambassador Croth. Our methods are well documented in our history. We're happy to share our tactical knowledge. Then, why have we not seen these tactics before? Croth demanded. Because, Chen replied carefully, Most advanced civilizations abandoned chemical-based weapons and physical combat millennia ago. You've evolved beyond what you consider primitive warfare. We haven't. The Altarian delegate's bioluminescent skin flickered with curiosity. You speak as if this is a weakness. From a certain perspective, it is, Chin admitted. While you were developing faster-than-light travel and energy weapons, we were perfecting the art of killing with pieces of metal. It's not something we're proud of, but it's proven useful. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. The main viewing screen activated, showing a sight that made even the warrior species step back. A full Korvax invasion fleet, 10,000 bioships strong, emerging from hyperspace near the Centauri trading hub. By the void, someone whispered. That's not a scout fleet. That's an extermination force. High Counselor Vrex's tentacles went rigid with fear. Centauri hub has 40 billion inhabitants across 12 space stations. The shield generators won't hold against that many ships. The council erupted in panic. Some called for immediate evacuation, others for negotiation. The Korvax broadcast their demands: submit to absorption or face annihilation. They gave Centauri hub 72 hours to decide. In the chaos, few noticed Sarah-chan speaking quietly into her communicator. But everyone noticed when she stood and addressed the council. High Counselor, Earth requests permission to intervene. The chamber fell silent. Ambassador, Vrex said slowly, we appreciate the gesture, but this is not a colonial skirmish. This is the full might of the Korvax. Even if your entire fleet could arrive in time dash, they can, Chin interrupted. And, with the Council's permission, they will. How? Croft demanded. Centauri is 40 light-years from Earth. Even at maximum hyperspace velocity, it would take your ships weeks to arrive. Chin's smile was enigmatic. We've made some modifications to the hyperspace drives you sold us. As for our fleet, she paused. High Counselor, I need to be very clear. If we do this, the galaxy will see what humanity is truly capable of. There will be no going back. Vrex looked at the screen showing the massive Korvax fleet, then at the human woman who spoke of violence with such casual certainty. The Council authorizes Earth's intervention. Thank you, Chin said. She spoke into her communicator again. Admiral Thompson, you have a go. Authorization code, Leatherneck Actual. What have you done? Someone asked. I've unleashed the United States Navy, Chin replied. God help us all. 46 hours later, near Centauri hub, the Korvax fleet prepared for the slaughter. Their bioships had formed a perfect sphere around the trading stations, weapons charging for synchronized bombardment. The hub's defenders, a mix of Draconid cruisers and Altarian patrol craft, huddled behind failing shields. Then, space itself seemed to scream. Hyperspace windows tore open with violence that violated every known law of FTL travel. Ships emerged at velocities that should have torn them apart. Human vessels of impossible design, angular and aggressive, bristling with weapons that defied classification. At the fleet's head was something that made even the Korvax pause. The USS Enterprise, a carrier that dwarfed any human vessel the galaxy had seen. But it was what emerged from its vast hangar bays that truly shocked observers. Those are atmospheric craft, the Centauri Defense Commander reported, confusion evident. They're launching fighters designed for planetary combat. But these weren't ordinary fighters. The F-99 Hellcats have been built for one purpose: to bring humanity's mastery of three-dimensional combat into the vacuum of space. They moved like nothing the galaxy had seen, pulling maneuvers that would have liquefied most species, their human pilots protected by technology reverse-engineered from a dozen civilizations, and improved with uniquely human innovations. The Korvax reacted as they always had, sending clouds of biointerceptors to swarm the fighters. It was a tactic that had worked for millennia. It failed catastrophically. The human pilots didn't fight like space forces. They fought like atmospheric combat veterans who happened to be in vacuum. They used momentum and inertia as weapons, turning their fighters into projectiles when needed, ejecting and remote piloting when necessary. But, most importantly, they fought with a coordinated chaos that the hive mind couldn't predict or counter. Splash 12. A pilot reported with professional calm, as if announcing mundane weather. Winchester on missiles, switching to guns. Watching from the council chambers, the assembled ambassadors saw something that would haunt their species' collective memories. Human pilots laughing as they fought. Not with madness, but with the joy of professionals excelling at their craft. But the fighters were just the beginning. Admiral Thompson, the fleet commander's voice echoed across all channels. You may fire when ready. What followed redefined the concept of orbital bombardment. The human battleships opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Mass drivers launching projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Missile swarms that seemed to multiply in flight, each warhead independently targeting vulnerable points on bioships. And then there were the weapons that made no sense, gravity pulse cannons that turned space itself into a weapon, antimatter charges that deleted matter from existence. Ow! Croft breathed, watching a dozen Korvax capital ships simply cease to exist. Antimatter is theoretically impossible to weaponize safely. We had a war, Chun said quietly, called World War II. We created atomic weapons in 4 years, from theory to deployment. When humans truly need to kill something, we find a way. The Korvax tried to adapt. They always had before. But adaptation required understanding, and nothing about human warfare made sense. Ships that should have retreated pressed attacks, while critically damaged. Pilots who should have fled certain death instead rammed their fighters into enemy vessels. And through it all, the humans coordinated with a precision that somehow exceeded even hive mind efficiency. Then the Marines arrived. They're boarding the bio ships, someone in the council chamber gasped. That's suicide. No one boards Korvax vessels and survives. But the Marines weren't just anyone. Footage from helmet cameras showed scenes of controlled brutality. Marines in powered armor that looked crude compared to Galactic standards, but proved devastatingly effective. They didn't try to outthink the Korvax drones. They outfought them with tactics refined in 100 human conflicts. Breach, breach, breach. The video showed a Marine sergeant leading his squad into a bio ship's neural center. The drones came at them in waves, perfect killing machines, meeting humans who had turned killing into muscle memory. The firefight lasted 12 minutes. When it ended, the Marines had lost 3 soldiers and killed over 200 drones. But more importantly, they had reached the bio ship's brain. Fire in the hole. The sergeant placed charges with practiced efficiency. The explosion that followed didn't just destroy the ship. It sent feedback through the hive mind connection, disrupting nearby vessels. They're not just killing ships, the Altarian delegate observed. They're attacking the network itself. The battle turned into a rout. For the first time in their history, the Korvax experienced something their collective consciousness couldn't process: fear. Individual bio ships began breaking from the hive mind, fleeing in directions that made no tactical sense. Admiral Thompson's voice cut across the chaos. All ships, implement Pursuit Protocol Texas 6. No vessel escapes. What followed was a hunt that would enter military textbooks across the galaxy. The humans didn't just defeat the Korvax. They systematically destroyed them with an efficiency that bordered on artistic. Ships trying to enter hyperspace found mines that hadn't been there moments before. Those attempting to hide in asteroid fields discovered Marine boarding teams had anticipated their routes. In 6 hours, the largest Korvax fleet ever assembled had been reduced to drifting organic debris. The immediate threat ended when the last bio ship exploded under concentrated fire from 3 human destroyers. But the real shock came from what happened next. Centauri Control, this is Admiral Thompson. We're beginning search and rescue operations. Our medical ships are available for any wounded, regardless of species. The same forces that had just conducted systematic slaughter switched seamlessly to humanitarian aid. Marines who had been killing with ruthless efficiency now carefully extracted survivors from damaged stations. Navy corpsmen treated alien wounded with technology adapted on the fly to non-human physiology. Watching from the council chambers, Ambassador Croft turned to Chun. Your people, they switch from warriors to healers, as if changing clothes. How? It's how we've survived, Chen explained. We learned that the warrior who can build is more valuable than one who can only destroy. Every Marine is trained in combat medicine. Every sailor knows damage control. We prepare for war by learning to preserve life. But the violence, someone protested. The enthusiasm your warriors show for combat. Chen's expression grew somber. That's our greatest shame and perhaps our greatest strength. We've channeled our capacity for violence into professional military service. Those Marines and sailors, they're not conscripts or gene-bred warriors. They're volunteers who chose to stand between humanity and threats. They train constantly not because they love war, but because they love what they protect. On the screen, human medical teams worked alongside Altarian healers, sharing techniques and technology freely. The contrast with the earlier battle footage was stark. High Counselor Vrex spoke slowly, his tentacles moving in patterns of deep thought. The Council must ask, Ambassador Chun, what does humanity want? You've demonstrated military superiority that could dominate the galaxy. Yet you speak of peace. We want what we've always wanted, Chun replied. To explore, to learn, to grow. To find our place among the stars without losing what makes us human. We've shown you our strength, not as a threat, but as a promise. We will stand with the peaceful species of this galaxy against any threat. And if we become the threat, Croth asked bluntly. Chen met his gaze steadily. Then, you'll learn why humans have so many rules of war. We have them because we know what happens when they're broken. The Korvax fought without mercy, so they received none. Fight with honor, and humans will be your staunchest allies. Break those rules. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The council session continued for hours, but the fundamental shift had already occurred. Humanity had announced itself on the galactic stage not as conquerors, but as protectors. Protectors who could unleash hell when necessary, but preferred to build rather than burn. Later, in private, ZYX Theta approached Chen once more. Your species terrifies me, the crystalline being admitted. Good, Chen replied. We terrify ourselves. That fear keeps us honest. What happens now? ZYX Theta asked. The Korvax will not forget this defeat. They'll return in force. Chen smiled grimly. Let them. They've only seen what one carrier group can do. We have 12 more in Sol System alone. And if they truly threaten Earth... She paused, seeming to consider her words. There are weapons we haven't used since the Third World War. Weapons we buried in treaty and shame. But if faced with extinction, we'll dig them up. Worse than what we've seen. What you've seen is our conventional forces showing restraint, Chun said. Push humanity to the brink, threaten our children, and you'll see why we have a saying, demons run when a good man goes to war. As reports came in of the Korvax' full retreat from Council space, of bioships abandoning systems they had held for centuries, the galaxy began to understand a new truth. They had worried about the Korvax because they were monsters who knew only war. They should have worried about the humans, the ones who knew war so well they had learned to chain it. But perhaps most unsettling was the message that appeared on every Korvax ship's binaural network, transmitted in perfect genetic code that should have been impossible for humans to know. This was a warning. Next time, we won't be gentle. United States Space Force, the galaxy would never be the same. The aftermath of Centauri changed everything. Species that had hidden behind shields for millennia began requesting human military advisors. Trade delegations arrived at Earth daily, offering technology and resources in exchange for protection agreements. But in the depths of Korvax space, something darker was stirring. The Overmind had never experienced defeat on this scale. Its vast consciousness, spread across 1,000 worlds and billion bodies, writhed with something new, rage. But more than rage, it felt curiosity. These humans had done the impossible. They must be understood. They must be dissected. In the biofactories of Korvax Prime, new types of warriors were being grown. Not just drones, but specialized units designed to counter human tactics. Acid-proof armor to resist projectile weapons. Neural dampeners to prevent the feedback attacks that had crippled hive communications. And something else, infiltrator units that could mimic other species, designed to learn human warfare from within. On Earth, Admiral Rebecca Thompson stood before the Joint Chiefs in a bunker beneath Cheyenne Mountain. The room was filled with representatives from every branch of the military, plus several individuals whose uniforms bore no insignia at all. "They're coming," she said without preamble. "Intelligence suggests the Korvax are massing their entire species for one decisive strike. We're talking millions of ships." General Marcus Hayes, recently promoted after the New Texas incident, studied the holographic projections. "Time frame: 6 months, maybe less," Thompson replied. "They're not just building ships. They're evolving new warrior breeds specifically to counter our tactics." "Then, we need to hit them first," suggested Air Force General Chun. "Strike before they're ready." "Negative," a quiet voice said from the shadows. The others turned to look at a man whose presence seemed to absorb light. Director Nathan Cross, head of Project Prometheus. "A preemptive strike plays into their hands. They're trying to force us to reveal our full capabilities." Hayes frowned. "With respect, Director, we've already shown significant force." Cross smiled without warmth. "General, what we've shown is barely 5% of our actual capability. The Korvax, and more importantly, the rest of the galaxy, have no idea what we're truly capable of. I prefer to keep it that way." "What do you suggest?" Thompson asked. "We let them come," Cross said, "but we prepare the killing ground. Operation Deep Black is ready for activation." The others exchanged glances. Deep Black was a legend even among those with the highest clearances, a defense protocol so extreme it had required approval from every world government to implement. "Are we sure that's necessary?" someone asked. Cross pulled up a new hologram. It showed Earth, surrounded by what looked like empty space. But as he enhanced the image, tiny objects became visible, millions of them scattered throughout the solar system. For the past 50 years, every piece of debris, every decommissioned satellite, every bit of space junk has been retrofitted with something special, Cross explained. Dormant weapon systems, waiting for activation. The Korvax want to see our true face? They'll see it. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council, tensions were rising. Some species, emboldened by humanity's protection, had begun refusing Korvax demands for genetic tribute. Others worried that humanity's rise would simply replace one tyrant with another. Ambassador Chun found herself in an unexpected meeting with ZYX Theta and several other representatives who had formed what they called the Neutral Alliance. "We need to discuss humanity's intentions," ZYX Theta said, her crystalline form pulsing with concern. "Your military grows stronger each day. You've reverse-engineered technologies from a dozen species. Some fear you're preparing for conquest." Chun sighed. She'd been expecting this conversation. "I understand your concerns. Perhaps it's time I showed you something. But I need your word that what you see doesn't leave this room." The ambassadors agreed, curiosity overcoming caution. Chun activated a secure holographic projector. The image that appeared showed Earth 50 years ago, a planet scarred by war, cities in ruins, billions dead from the Third World War. "This was humanity after we deployed our full arsenal against each other," Chin said quietly. "Antimatter bombs, genetic weapons, autonomous kill drones, orbital bombardment platforms. We turned our homeworld into a wasteland because we couldn't control what we'd become." The images shifted, showing the reconstruction, the treaties, the painful rebuilding of civilization. "We didn't reach for the stars out of ambition," Chun continued. "We reached for them because we needed to become something better. Every human soldier takes an oath not just to their nation, but to humanity itself. Never again will we turn our full strength against the innocent." "But you prepare for war constantly," one ambassador noted. "Because we know what happens when we're not prepared," Chun replied. "The Third World War started because we thought we'd evolved beyond major conflict. We were wrong. Now we stay ready, so we never have to learn that lesson again." Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding. Not just in the council chambers, but across every human installation in known space. "What's happening?" ZYX Theta asked. Chin's face had gone pale as she read her priority alerts. "The Korvax. They're not waiting 6 months. They're already here. In Sol System, The first wave emerged from hyperspace beyond Neptune's orbit. Not thousands of ships, not tens of thousands. Medial. The Korvax had committed their entire civilization to humanity's destruction. But something was wrong. As the bioships oriented themselves for the push toward Earth, space around them began to shimmer. What looked like debris suddenly came alive. Deep Black is active, Admiral Thompson announced from the command center on Luna. All personnel, implement Protocol 7. Across the solar system, humanity's true defense network revealed itself. Every piece of space junk was a weapon. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and converted into a gun platform. Clouds of nanobots, dormant for decades, activated and began converting Korvax biomatter into more weapons. The first wave of Korvax ships simply ceased to exist, dissolved by weapons that attacked at the molecular level. The second wave fared no better, running into minefields that appeared from nowhere, seeded by stealth drones that had been mistaken for cosmic dust. But the Korvax kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. "Ma'am," a technician reported to Thompson, "we're getting strange readings from the third wave. They're different." On the screens, new types of Korvax warriors emerged. These weren't the standard bioships. They were something evolved specifically to fight humans, armored against kinetic weapons, shielded against energy attacks, and moving in patterns that no hive mind should be able to conceive. They're learning, Thompson realized, adapting in real time. Then, it's time to show them something they can adapt to, General Hayes said. He turned to Director Cross. "Request permission to activate Prometheus." Cross studied the tactical display for a long moment. "Do it." On Earth, in bunkers buried miles beneath major cities, soldiers who didn't officially exist prepared weapons that weren't supposed to exist. These were humanity's dark secret, the veterans of the Third World War's most brutal campaigns, kept in cryogenic suspension, awakened only for the gravest threats. They were called the Revenants, and they were humanity's final answer to extinction. As the Korvax fleet pushed through the outer defenses, approaching Mars, ports opened on the red planet's surface. Ships emerged, not the clean, angular vessels of the regular fleet, but scarred, twisted things that looked like they'd been built from nightmares. The Revenants had been given one order: show no mercy. What followed would be remembered as the most savage space battle in galactic history. The Revenant ships didn't just fight, they hunted. They used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They turned Korvax biomatter against itself, seeding viruses that made drones attack their own ships. They deployed weapons that didn't just kill, they made death last, broadcasting the psychic screams of dying Korvax across the hive mind network. "Dear God," someone whispered in the Luna Command Center, "what have we unleashed?" But the Revenants were just buying time. The real blow was being prepared on Earth itself. In a facility that didn't exist on any map, Dr. Sarah Chun, the ambassador's sister, made final preparations. Project Longshot was humanity's most guarded secret, a weapon based on principles stolen from a dozen civilizations and improved with human ingenuity. "Are you sure about this?" her assistant asked. "Once we fire, there's no going back. The galaxy will know we have this capability." Dr. Chen looked at the readings showing millions of Korvax ships still pouring into the system. "If we don't use it now, there won't be a galaxy left to judge us." She entered the activation codes. Deep beneath Earth's surface, exotic matter generators that had been charging for 20 years reached critical mass. The planet's entire magnetic field fluctuated as humanity prepared to demonstrate why they were the only species to successfully weaponize a fundamental force of the universe. "All ships, clear the strike zone," Admiral Thompson ordered. Prometheus firing in T-minus 60 seconds. The human fleet, including the Revenants, scattered. The Korvax, sensing opportunity, surged forward. They were exactly where humanity wanted them. Fire. Earth fired gravity itself as a weapon. A wave of distorted space-time erupted from the planet, expanding outward at light speed. Where it touched Korvax ships, it didn't destroy them. It unraveled them. Matter forgot how to hold together. The fundamental forces that allowed atoms to exist simply stopped. The wave expanded past Mars, past the asteroid belt, past Jupiter. Millions of Korvax ships simply ceased, not destroyed, but erased from existence at the quantum level. But humanity wasn't done. Phase 2, Dr. Chen announced. Initiating reverse wave. The gravity weapon pulsed again, but this time it pulled instead of pushed. The quantum signatures of the erased Korvax were drawn back, their matter reconstituted, but under human control. We're not just defeating them, Thompson realized. We're converting them. The reconstructed bioships retained their form, but now answered to Earth's commands. In minutes, humanity had not only destroyed the Korvax fleet, but had gained millions of new vessels. In the Korvax overmind, panic spread like poison. It wasn't just the defeat, it was the completeness of it. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had demonstrated the ability to end any species, anywhere, at any time. But perhaps most terrifying was what happened next. Korvax overmind. Admiral Thompson broadcast on all frequencies. This is Earth Command. You have one chance. Surrender now, completely and unconditionally, or we will activate Prometheus at full power and erase your entire species from existence. If you would commit genocide, the overmind's response came, filled with disbelief. No, Thompson replied. We would commit extinction. You came to destroy us. You came to consume our children, our culture, our future. You have seen less than a fraction of what we're capable of. Surrender, or see it all. In the council chambers, ambassadors watched in horrified awe. Ambassador Chun stood silent, knowing this moment would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. They're bluffing, someone said. No species would go that far. ZYX Theta turned to Chun. Are they? Chun's expression was carved from stone. The Prometheus weapon can target quantum signatures across galactic distances. Every Korvax, everywhere, shares the same base signature. If we activate it at full power, she didn't finish. You would kill trillions, YX Theta said. To save trillions more, Chun replied. The Korvax have consumed hundreds of species. If they're allowed to continue, they'll consume hundreds more. We didn't ask for this choice. But now that it's been forced upon us, on every screen in the galaxy, the same image appeared. Earth, surrounded by the converted Korvax fleet, with energy readings that defied comprehension building beneath the planet's surface. You have 60 seconds, Thompson announced. In the Overmind's vast consciousness, calculations ran at the speed of thought. It had evolved beyond individual death, beyond fear of ending. But this wasn't death, this was deletion. Not just of the present, but of any future possibility. With 30 seconds remaining, the Overmind broadcast its surrender. The galaxy exhaled collectively. But the real shock came with humanity's terms. They didn't demand the Korvax's destruction or enslavement. Instead, they offered something unprecedented. You will cease all consumption of other species, Thompson stated. In return, we will provide you with synthetic genetic material that will allow your evolution to continue. You will return all recently consumed species' genetic templates for restoration. And you will submit to monitoring to ensure compliance. Why? The Overmind asked. Why not destroy us? Because, Ambassador Chen said, having been patched into the communication, we've learned something about monsters. It's better to reform them than to become them. You're a species that only knew growth through consumption. We're offering you a different path. The terms were accepted. The war was over. But in the council chambers, the mood was far from celebratory. The assembled species had witnessed something that redefined their understanding of humanity. You could conquer the galaxy, Croth said to Chun. Nothing could stop you. Nothing except ourselves, Chun replied. We've conquered galaxies before, in games, in simulations, in our dreams. It always ends the same way. The conqueror becomes the tyrant becomes the monster, and the monster eventually faces someone like us. We choose a different path. But you keep these weapons, ZYX Theta observed. Because we know the galaxy isn't ready for perfect peace, Chun said. There will be other threats. Other species who mistake our preference for peace as weakness. When they come, they'll learn what the Korvax learned. Which is... Chun looked at the screen showing the converted bioships, now serving as hospital vessels, helping to restore species the Korvax had consumed. that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because we choose not to be. We've mastered war so completely that we've learned to hate it. We've built weapons that could crack planets and delete species, and we keep them locked away, praying we never need them again. She paused, meeting the eyes of every ambassador in turn. But if you threaten our peace, if you mistake our restraint for weakness, if you come for our children or our allies, then you'll learn why humanity's greatest fear isn't defeat. It's what we become when we stop holding back. The council session ended in contemplative silence. The galaxy had witnessed the truth of humanity, a species that had looked into the abyss of its own capacity for violence and chosen to build barriers against it. But when those barriers were threatened, when the survival of peace itself was at stake, they would unveil horrors that made the Korvax seem like children playing at war. As the ambassadors departed, many paused to look at the human delegation with new eyes, not as potential conquerors, but as something far more complex, guardians who had chained their own demons and would unleash them only to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy had wanted to know what humans truly were. Now they knew. Humans were the monsters who chose to be heroes, the warriors who chose to be builders, the destroyers who chose to create. And God help anyone who forced them to choose otherwise. The transformation of the Korvax from galaxy's nightmare to productive citizens became the greatest rehabilitation project in known history. Human genetic engineers worked alongside reformed bioships, creating sustainable alternatives to their consumption-based evolution. But success bred its own challenges. 6 months after the surrender, Ambassador Chen stood before a very different Galactic Council. Half the seats were now filled with species once thought extinct, restored from Korvax genetic banks with human assistance. The political landscape had shifted dramatically. The restored coalition demands full membership rights, announced Ambassador Thimal the Nexari, a species that had been extinct for 300 years until last month. We also demand reparations from the council members who stood by while we were consumed. The chamber erupted in arguments. Old grudges, buried by the Korvax threat, surfaced with vengeance. The Draconids accused the Altarians of using the Korvax as a buffer. The Sigma Collective demanded compensation for defensive expenses. Smaller species formed blocks, demanding protection from their former oppressors. Chen watched it all with growing concern. Humanity had won the war, but peace was proving more complex than any battle. Order, High Counselor Vrex demanded, his tentacles lashing with frustration. We must maintain unity or dash, or what? Interrupted a new voice. Ambassador Krexjan of the reformed Korvax entered the chamber, his biomechanical form a strange fusion of the old and new. You'll call the humans to impose order? They've already shown they hold the true power here. An uncomfortable silence fell. It was the truth everyone had been dancing around. Humanity's military supremacy had made them the de facto arbiters of galactic peace. Chen's communicator chimed with a priority alert. As she read it, her expression darkened. Counselors, I'm afraid we have a more immediate problem. Long-range sensors have detected an anomaly at the galactic edge. Something is coming. More Korvax? Someone asked fearfully. No, Chen said, pulling up the sensor data. Something we've never seen before. The hologram showed ships, if they could be called that. They were geometric impossibilities, forms that hurt to look at directly, folding through dimensions that shouldn't exist. First contact protocol? Vrex suggested hopefully. The answer came as the anomalous fleet passed through a frontier mining colony. The entire star system simply stopped. Planets hung motionless in their orbits. The star's fusion ceased mid-reaction. Time itself had been paused. By the void, the Wyx Theta whispered. What are they? Before anyone could respond, every screen in the chamber activated. The being that appeared defied description. It existed in too many dimensions at once, its form constantly shifting through states of matter and energy. Greetings, primitive beings, it said, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. We are the transcended. We have observed your recent conflicts with amusement. The species you call humanity has proven interesting. We have decided to test them properly. Who are you to test anyone? Croth demanded. The being's attention turned to him, and the Draconid warrior immediately collapsed, his mind overwhelmed by attempting to perceive something beyond three-dimensional existence. We are what you will become, given sufficient time, the Transcendent said. Most species evolve beyond physical violence within their first million years. Humanity has done the opposite, perfected it into an art form. This is unusual. We must determine if they are an aberration to be corrected or something more. Chun stepped forward, her marine guards moving to flank her. If you want to test humanity, test us directly. Leave the others out of it. Brave words from a mayfly, the Transcended mused. Very well. We offer a challenge. Single combat between our champion and yours. If humanity wins, we will depart and trouble you no more. If we win, humanity submits to correction, the removal of your violent tendencies. And if we refuse? Chen asked. The being gestured, and another star system froze in the display. We will pause your entire galaxy, one system at a time, until you agree. You have one of your hours to decide. The transmission ended, leaving the council in chaos. But Chen was already on her communicator. Get me Admiral Thompson, and wake up Sergeant Major Reeves. Ma'am, her aide said carefully, Reeves is in a restricted ward. He hasn't been cleared for dash. I know exactly where he is, Chen interrupted. Wake him up. In the depths of Luna Base, in a section that required presidential authority to enter, medical technicians approached a suspension chamber marked with warnings in 12 languages. Inside floated a man who shouldn't exist, Sergeant Major Jack Reeves, the only survivor of Operation Broken Arrow during the Third World War. Reeves had been the test subject for humanity's most extreme enhancement program, a fusion of genetic manipulation, cybernetic augmentation, and something else, exposure to exotic energy that had killed everyone else in his unit. He'd won his battle, ended a war, and then asked to be put to sleep because what he'd become terrified even him. Sir, a technician said as the chamber began its revival sequence, your presence has been requested for a combat situation. Reeves' eyes opened, one human blue, one a swirling vortex of colors that didn't belong in normal space. How long? 37 years, sir. Good, he said, stepping out of the chamber as if he'd been napping, not suspended. I was starting to dream. When I dream, things get complicated. Within an hour, the leadership of Earth's military had assembled. The Transcended challenge had been analyzed from every angle, and the conclusion was unanimous. They had to accept. But who do we send? General Hayes asked. These beings exist partially outside our dimensional framework. Normal weapons won't work. That's why we're sending Reeves, Director Cross said. He's the only human who survived exposure to transdimensional energy. He might be the only one who can even perceive their champion properly. All eyes turned to Reeves, who was reviewing the footage of the Transcended with disturbing calm. I'll need my old kit, he said simply. And music, these types always underestimate the power of good battle music. You understand what's at stake? Admiral Thompson asked. If you lose, they'll remove humanity's capacity for violence. We'll be sheep, Reeves finished. Yeah, I got it. Question is, do they understand what they're asking for? They want to see human violence perfected. He smiled, and several people stepped back unconsciously. They're about to get their wish. The arena materialized in space between the frozen systems, a sphere of crystallized space-time that allowed beings from different dimensional states to interact. The Galactic Council was given front-row seats, whether they wanted them or not. Reeves stood at one end, looking almost primitive in his scarred combat armor. He'd refused the latest equipment, choosing instead the gear he'd worn during the war, pieces held together by faith and spite, weapons that belonged in a museum. Is that a chemical projectile weapon? ZYX Theta asked in disbelief. He's bringing gunpowder to fight a transdimensional being? That's not just any gun, Chen said quietly. That's Betsy. She's killed things that shouldn't be able to die. The Transcended champion appeared, a writhing mass of geometries that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Where it moved, reality rippled and reformed. Mathematics themselves seemed to break down in its presence. Human, it spoke directly into Reeves' mind. You cannot comprehend what you face. I exist beyond your understanding of Dash. Yeah, Reeves interrupted, checking his rifle. You're a big, scary, interdimensional thing. I get it. Can we fight now? I haven't killed anything in 37 years, and I'm getting twitchy. The champion paused, clearly not expecting casual dismissal. You show no fear. Fear? Reeves laughed. Buddy, I've killed my own species with weapons that delete souls. I've walked through cities where physics gave up and went home. I've seen the face of human cruelty perfected into science. He chambered a round that glowed with impossible energies. You're just Tuesday. The fight began. The transcended champion attacked with forces beyond comprehension. It threw fragments of collapsed stars, reverse causality to attack before it moved, existed in multiple states simultaneously to strike from all angles. Reeves shot it. The bullets weren't normal matter. They were conceptual weapons, each round carrying not just kinetic force, but the weight of human violence condensed into metallic form. Where they struck, they didn't just damage, they imposed three-dimensional physics on something that existed beyond them. But the champion adapted, shifting to states where bullets had no meaning. Interesting, it mused, but ultimately futile. You cannot kill what exists beyond death. Watch me, Reeves growled. He dropped the rifle and pulled out a knife. Not a monomolecular blade or plasma cutter, just steel, worn and old, and absolutely wrong for this fight. Chenis et whisper d'urgenterie. He's lost it. You can't fight a transdimensional being with a combat knife. That's not just any knife, Chen said. That's the blade he used to kill General Morrison during the war. Morrison, who had uploaded his consciousness to a quantum computer network. Reeves found a way to stab mathematics itself. The champion laughed, a sound like universes colliding. You think primitive steel can harm me? Reeves moved, not through space, but through the cracks between spaces. The exotic energy that had transformed him decades ago finally made sense. He wasn't fully human anymore. He was humanity's violence, given just enough transcendence to reach things that shouldn't be reachable. The knife found its mark, not in any physical location, but in the conceptual space where the champion's existence touched reality. And where it cut, it left wounds that couldn't heal because they existed in dimensions where healing had no meaning. The champion screamed across 7 dimensions. Impossible. You're just a primitive. A mayfly. You cannot dash. That's where you're wrong, Reeves said, twisting the blade. I'm not just a primitive. I'm a human primitive. We didn't evolve past violence. We evolved through it. You know what that means? The champion tried to phase out of reality, but the knife followed, carried by will as much as physics. It means we know violence like you know transcendence. It's not just something we do, it's something we are. And when pushed to the wall, when everything's on the line, Reeves smiled as cracks appeared in the champion's form. We can violence anything. The champion made one last desperate attack, throwing the weight of collapsed civilizations at Reeves. But humans had collapsed their own civilization and rebuilt it. The attack found no purchase on someone who had walked through the ashes of his own species near extinction. With a sound like reality hiccuping, the champion ceased. Not died, ceased. Reeves had cut it out of existence so thoroughly that the universe forgot it had ever been. Silence filled the arena. Even the transcended seemed shocked. Winner, humanity, the lead transcended announced, its voice uncertain for the first time. This is unprecedented. No species has ever. Yeah, well, Reeves said, cleaning his knife on his sleeve. Welcome to dealing with humans. We're unprecedented in all the wrong ways. You have won, the transcended continued. We will depart as promised. But know this, what you are, this perfect fusion of evolution and violence, it is unique in all the cosmos. You are either the galaxy's greatest hope or its inevitable doom. Probably both, Reeves said. That's kind of our thing. The transcended vanished, taking their frozen systems with them. Time resumed its normal flow, and the galaxy was left to process what they had witnessed. A human with Stone Age weapons had defeated a being of pure thought, not through technology or evolution, but through sheer, perfected violence coupled with an inability to accept defeat. The Council recognizes Earth's victory, Vrex said formally, though his voice shook. And thanks humanity for its protection. Chen nodded, but her attention was on Reeves. Back to sleep? Not yet, Reeves said, looking at the stars. Got a feeling you're going to need me again soon. These transcended types always travel in groups. Besides, he grinned, I haven't had this much fun in decades. Maybe stick around, train some of your Marines in transdimensional knife fighting. Is that even possible? Someone asked. Anything's possible, Reeves replied. That's what makes humans scary. We look at impossible and ask, but have you tried stabbing it? And when that doesn't work, we figure out how to stab harder. As the council dispersed, processing yet another paradigm shift in their understanding of humanity, ZYX Theta approached Chen one final time. Your species will either save us all or doom us all, she said. I know, Chen replied. That's why we try so hard to choose correctly. Because when humans choose wrong. She looked at Reeves, who was cheerfully explaining to fascinated Marines how he'd learned to punch concepts. When we choose wrong, we do it with the same excellence we bring to everything else. The galaxy had learned 3 truths about humanity in recent years. First, humans didn't fear war. They feared themselves at war. Second, human violence wasn't their weakness. It was their most terrifying strength. And third, when the universe presented humans with an impossible challenge, they didn't evolve past it. They picked up the nearest weapon and proved that with sufficient application of violence and an absolute refusal to accept defeat, even gods could bleed. The real question now was whether the galaxy could survive humanity's protection. The peace lasted exactly 3 years. In that time, humanity had transformed the galaxy. Trade routes once plagued by pirates now ran under marine protection. Species that had hidden for millennia emerged to join the council. The Korvax had become master terraformers, using their biotechnology to heal worlds instead of consuming them. Even Sergeant Major Reeves had found purpose, establishing an academy for what he called practical impossible violence, teaching select warriors for various species how to fight things that shouldn't exist. But peace, as humanity had learned repeatedly, was never permanent. Ambassador Chen received the news during what should have been a routine council session. Her aide's face had gone pale as he handed her the classified dispatch. She read it twice, unable to process the words. Counselors, she said, her voice cutting through the usual debates. I must inform you that Earth has gone dark. All communication with Sol System ceased 17 hours ago. Our last message was a partial transmission. They came from inside. The children dash. The chamber erupted. Earth was the military heart of the peaceful galaxy. If something could strike there, who? Croft demanded. The Korvax? The Transcended? Unknown, Chen replied, though her hands trembled slightly. Fleet Command is mobilizing everything we have. I must return immediately. We're coming with you, ZYX Theta announced. To everyone's surprise, nods of agreement came from across the chamber. Earth stood for us. We stand for Earth. Within hours, the largest fleet in galactic history assembled. Not just human ships, but vessels from every member species. Former enemies flew in formation, united by a single purpose, to repay the debt they owed humanity. But what they found when they dropped out of hyperspace at Sol's edge defied comprehension. Earth was there, but it was wrong. The planet hung in space, surface unchanged, cities intact. But there were no lights, no radio signals, no signs of life, just silence. Bioscan. Admiral Thompson asked from the fleet flagship. 7 billion human life signs, the technician reported. Then, quieter, but no neural activity. They're alive, but empty. Before anyone could respond, every screen in the fleet activated. The face that appeared was human, a child, perhaps 10 years old, with eyes that held the weight of eons. Hello, the child said pleasantly. We are the Evolved. We have come to free humanity from its burden. Who are you? Thompson demanded. What have you done? We are what humanity was meant to become, the child replied. Beings of pure thought, freed from the prison of violence. We arose from your own children, those born after your contact with exotic energies. They evolved beyond physical needs, beyond aggression, beyond the primitive drives that chain your species. Chun felt ice in her veins. The Academy children. The ones exposed to transdimensional energy during training. Yes, the Evolve confirmed. We transcended. And in our transcendence, we saw the truth. Humanity's violence isn't strength. It's a disease. So we have cured it. Every human in Soul System has been freed from their violent impulses. They exist now in perfect peace. You lobotomized them, Thompson snarled. We elevated them. The Evolved corrected. Observe. The screens showed Earth's surface. Humans moved through their daily routines, but something was fundamentally wrong. They didn't laugh. They didn't argue. They didn't create. They simply existed. Where are the Marines? Hayes asked. The fleet personnel? Freed first, the Evolved said. Your warriors suffered most from the disease of violence. Now they know peace. As will you all in time. We will spread this gift throughout the galaxy, ending all conflict forever. The transmission ended. In the stunned silence that followed, Reeves spoke from his position with the Marine contingent. Well, that's the creepiest thing I've ever seen. And I've seen some stuff. How we fight them? Someone asked. They're human children with godlike powers. We can't just dash. Yes, we can, Reeves interrupted. They stopped being human the moment they decided to lobotomize their own species. They're a threat, and we deal with threats. But they're children, the Altarian representative protested. No, Chen said quietly. Not anymore. There's something else wearing children's faces. The question is, how do we fight beings that can apparently turn off human aggression with a thought? The answer came from an unexpected source. Krekjan of the reformed Korvax raised a biomechanical appendage. If I may, the Evolved made an error. They freed humans from violence, but violence isn't uniquely human. It exists in every species. And, thanks to human training, we know how to use it effectively, Kroth finished. The galaxy will fight for humanity. Plans were made quickly. The combined fleet would assault Earth directly, forcing the Evolved to respond. Meanwhile, specialized teams would attempt to reach the surface and find a way to reverse what had been done. One problem, Thompson noted. The moment we get close, they'll just turn off our aggression too. Not all of us, Reeves said. He tapped his temple, where exotic energies still swirled behind his eye. I'm already partially transcended. Might give me some resistance. Besides, I've got an idea. Which is? Reeves grinned. They evolved past violence, right? Means they probably forgot how to deal with the really primitive stuff. Time to show them what happens when you forget your roots. The assault began at 0800 Earth Standard Time. The Allied fleet dropped out of hyperspace in tight formation, weapons charging. The space around Earth rippled as the Evolved responded, waves of pacifying energy radiating outward. Ships began to falter as crews lost their will to fight. But not all of them. Cordova bioships engaging. Krekjan reported. Our hive mind structure provides partial immunity, maintaining attack vector. The Draconids roared their battle songs, using rage to burn through the pacification. The Altarians shifted to pure logic mode, treating violence as a mathematical equation rather than an emotional response. But it was the humans who provided the key. All ships, implement Protocol Primal. Thompson ordered. Throughout the human vessels, carefully preserved recordings began to play. Not orders or propaganda, but something far more basic, the sounds of human children laughing, families at dinner, the simple noises of human life and joy. What does that accomplish? An ally captain asked. Reminder, Thompson said grimly, of what we're fighting for. Humans don't just fight from anger. We fight from love. And love can be violent as hell when what you love is threatened. The effect was immediate. Human crews shook off the pacification, their protective instincts overriding the Evolved's influence. Weapons fired with renewed purpose. On Earth's surface, the Evolved watched with confusion that bordered on fear. Impossible, one said through a child's mouth. We removed their capacity for violence. No, another replied, watching the tactical display. We removed their anger. But human violence isn't rooted in anger alone. It comes from something deeper. Meanwhile, Reeves and a mixed team of human Marines and alien warriors had reached Earth's atmosphere in a stealth dropship. As pacifying waves washed over them, Most of the team slumped. But Reeves remained standing, along with two others, a Korvax warrior form, and, surprisingly, ZX Theta. How are you resisting? Reeves asked the crystalline being. My species experiences emotion as light frequencies, she explained. I'm literally refracting their influence. Though I can't maintain this for long. Don't need long, Reeves said, checking his weapons. Just need to reach the source. They landed in what had been New York City. The streets were full of peaceful humans, moving without purpose or passion. It was more horrifying than any battlefield Reeves had seen. Their likes that pointed to Central Park, where a group of children sat in a perfect circle, their eyes closed in concentration. The evolved collective. They're maintaining the pacification from there. Of course they're in a circle, Reeves muttered. Transcendent beings love their geometry. All right, here's the plan. I'm going to do something incredibly stupid, and you're going to help me do it. What do you intend? The Korvax asked. Reeves pulled out a device that looked like it had been cobbled together from scrap. Remember how I said they forgot their roots? Well, humans have one response to transcendent beings trying to control us. We get angry, and when we can't get angry normally, he activated the device. Pain exploded through his nervous system, raw, primal, overwhelming. But with the pain came something else, fury. Not the cold rage of calculation, but the hot, primitive anger of a wounded animal. The evolved reacted instantly, pouring more pacifying energy toward him. But Reeves' anger was no longer entirely human. It was mixed with the exotic energies that had transformed him, creating something they couldn't simply turn off. You want to evolve past violence. Reeves snarled, advancing on the circle. Let me show you why that's a mistake. The children's eyes opened, revealing depths of starlight and void. You cannot harm us. We are beyond physical dash, Reeves shot one. Not with bullets or energy, but with concentrated humanity, the messy, violent, passionate essence of what made humans human. The evolved child screamed, not in pain, but in existential horror, as mortality flooded back into its consciousness. You're not gods, Reeves said, shooting another. You're humans who forgot what that means. Let me remind you, each shot brought another evolved crashing back to reality. But they fought back, reality warping around them as they tried to erase Reeves from existence. In orbit, the battle raged. The Allied fleet had pushed through Earth's defenses, but at terrible cost. Ships burned in the void, crew members fought against their own pacified comrades, and still the evolved maintained their hold on the planet. Then, suddenly, the pacification field flickered. Something's happening on the surface, Thompson reported. The field is destabilizing. On Earth, Reeves stood in the center of the broken circle, blood running from his eyes, and ears from the strain of channeling humanity's essence as a weapon. Around him, the evolved children writhed on the ground, overwhelmed by the return of human emotion. Not just violence, but love, fear, hope, and all the messy feelings they had tried to transcend. You're killing us, one gasped. No, Reeves corrected, helping the child sit up. I'm saving you. You tried to evolve past being human. But evolution isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming better while staying yourself. But the violence, another child whimpered. It hurts. The anger, the fear, how do you live with it? Same way humans always have, Reeves said gently. We choose. Every day, every moment, we choose to be better than our worst impulses. That's not weakness, that's strength. Across Earth, the pacification ended. 7 billion humans gasped as consciousness flooded back. The confusion was immediate and overwhelming, but so was the relief. In space, the evolved children appeared on every screen simultaneously, but now they looked like children again, scared and confused. We were wrong, they admitted. We thought transcendence meant leaving humanity behind. But you can't evolve past what you are. You can only evolve through it. So what now? Admiral Thompson asked. The children looked at each other, then back at the fleet. Now we learn about being human, about choosing well, about, one managed a small smile, about using our gifts to protect, not control. The Academy will take them, Reeves announced, surprising everyone. These kids have power but no wisdom. They need to learn what it means to be human before they can transcend it properly. You trust them? Shin asked. After what they did, they're kids who made a mistake with godlike powers, Reeves said. Humans have been making those mistakes forever. Difference is, now they have someone to teach them better. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy adjusted to its new reality. The evolved children, now calling themselves the Awakened, began training under